There are very few things that contribute to students' performance on the USMLE exams that are as simple and as important as a proper study structure. And every single student, if you're preparing for the step one or step two CK, you are going to need a study structure right from the beginning. If you jump into studying, you just make a schedule and then you begin to study, you're going to run into problems very soon. And especially when you'd have not properly laid out plans on how to deal with certain challenges you're going to find on the way, it's going to be very difficult for you to navigate these challenges. And what happens to most students is that you now extend your study duration to up to a year, and some people spend even up to 2 years preparing for this exam. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys a structure that I use for all my students, whether step one or step two CK, I like preparing for these exams. If you stick to this study structure, you are going to easily pass the examinations, especially now that step one is part of it. You don't really need to bother too much about scoring a 260, I guess. It's even much easier for you to pass the exam. Similarly, for step 2 CK, you can get a good score if you stick to a simple structure like the one I'm going to give you. The first thing you're going to be needing to do if you're preparing for step one or step two CK is to get a schedule. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you what to do at each of these steps and what not to do. Right? There's a temptation with students where you feel like the schedule, for example, is the problem. You feel like if you get a better schedule, then somehow you're going to understand stuff better or learn things better and hopefully get an even better score. But this is not true. How should you make a schedule? What should your schedule look like? Your schedule should be very simple. I've seen people make schedules where they put every single detail to the last hour. I had a student sometime recently, actually, and a step 2 CK student, and she said, what if we are able to make the schedule in such a way that I know what exactly I should be studying at 6 p.m., what exactly I should be studying at 8 p.m. on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday. The problem with schedules like that is that when you miss a day of studying or even an hour of studying, if you go that detailed, to as low as an hour, then it's very difficult for you to continue with the schedule, because if you miss 1 hour, then you're likely to miss the next one, right? Or you're going to be trying to catch up for that hour the next time, and then eventually the whole schedule collapses. So when you're making your schedule, generally what I do is I give these subjects according to weeks. So if you're studying GI, for example, this week, you know you're studying GI between Monday to Friday, say between the 21st of March until the 26th of March, you're going to be studying GI. Now, if on the 21st you didn't get to do enough studying because life happened, then on the 22nd you can try to get more studying done. If on the 22nd you didn't get as much as you would have liked to, on the 23rd you can try to get much more studying done. So it allows flexibility for the errors that are very likely to occur. There are very few people that can stick to a very tight schedule and accomplish it all through for a month, 2 months of preparation. So generally, a simple schedule is going to be useful. That's usually the first step. If you don't have a schedule, don't bother starting the preparation for the exam. It's completely useless. There are students that I've just, all I've done is give them schedules and they just go study, and I check up on them, meet with them once a month, once in 6 weeks, and we look at what they've done, what progress they've made little adjustment to their schedule, little adjustment to their preparation plan, and then they're able to perform well. So you certainly are going to need a good schedule as you start out. The second thing you're going to be doing is going into the study phase. You're going to be going into the study phase. Generally, the study phase should take about 3 to 4 months, depending on where each student is. A common pitfall for a lot of students is to think that you can prepare for the USMLE in 6 weeks. Now, you must have heard this from a lot of people. How I prepared for the USMLE in 6 weeks, how I passed the USMLE in 6 weeks. I'll tell you this in this video. Take it from me, someone that has been preparing people for the exams for over 3 years now, or 4 or 5, a whole lot of time actually. Nobody prepares for and passes the USMLE in 6 weeks. There is no such a person alive in the planet. If I prepare for the USMLE in 6 weeks, it's not because I started learning USMLE materials or studying the content for the USMLE in that 6 weeks. I have been studying all through my life in med school. I have finished a lot of medical books. I have finished a lot of textbooks. So if I begin, I have my exam coming up in what? Actually, about 6 weeks or thereabout. If I go to that exam and I easily pass the exam, which I expect I should, of course, and I tell a student that I used 6 weeks, that wouldn't be true because I have a lot of experience with all these resources. So you don't want to measure yourself or compare your abilities based on a 6 weeks benchmark. It's not going to happen. And if you're looking to be able to study for 6 weeks, dedicated 6 weeks, then you should have been studying a long time coming. So the study phase is going to take you about 3 to 4 months. Some students may need 5, 6 months, a little longer. It doesn't hurt you. It is much better that you actually take as long as possible realistically to prepare for the exam than to try to go short. I have seen students that say, you know what, I want to do this exam in 2 months. And then when because you want to do it in 2 months, you're forced to make a schedule that is very compact and doesn't allow you actually learn any subject properly. So at the end of that 1 month, 2 months duration, you find out that you didn't learn anything properly. So you have to actually learn everything from the beginning again. And then it's going to take much longer to prepare for the exam than you would have anticipated. It's better that you determine from the beginning, I'm going to prepare for this exam in 6 months, I'm going to prepare for this exam in 5 months, than to assume that you can do it in 2 months. And then when it's 2 months is up, you did not get it done, and you only realize that, okay, you didn't really pay attention to anything properly. And now you have to study almost everything from the beginning, right? So 3 to 4 months study phase. During this study phase, what should you be using to study? Number one is UWorld. UWorld remains the best question bank resource out there, especially for people studying for the USMLE for the very first time. UWorld is, at least for now, not replaceable. However, there are students that have done UWorld several times. I have had students that when they came to me, they had done UWorld 3 times, they had done UWorld 2 times, and they've still not been able to pass the exams. Now, if you are that kind of student, forget about UWorld. You're not going to need to do UWorld because at this point, UWorld is no longer testing your ability. You basically remember most of the questions, you remember most of the answers to the questions. So if you do a block of UWorld and you get 70, for example, it may not really be 70. Like that 70 may not be a justified score, right? The purpose of UWorld one is to teach you for you to learn, but the second purpose of UWorld is to test you as you go so that you see your performance and you see your improvement. So if you've done UWorld severally in the past, you've done UWorld twice, thrice, then and you've not made progress, it may be important that you switch to a different Q bank. Amboss is the alternative I recommend for most of my students. There's USMLE RX and all of those things. Again, you'd have to look at those Q banks to see what is best for you. My recommendation would be Amboss if UWorld has already been done. Now, during your study phase, you're going to need to do UWorld system by system. System by system. I've seen people say, "Oh, I heard that I'm supposed to do UWorld mixed." Yes, you're going to do UWorld mixed eventually, but at the beginning of your study, for the first time you're preparing for the USMLE, you are studying GI. Go ahead and do UWorld system by system. The goal of your study phase is to gain mastery. The goal of your study phase is to gain mastery. When you finish studying gastroenterology, you're going to become a gastroenterologist. When you finish studying endocrinology, you want to become an endocrinologist. When you finish studying neuro, you want to become a neurologist. You gain mastery. You're going to see your UWorld scores progress in a certain fashion. For example, if you do UWorld for the first time, let's say you studied neuro. When you do UWorld, some of you may get 40+% the first time you do a UWorld block. You don't need to say, "Oh my goodness, I failed UWorld, I'm not scoring well on UWorld, I need to go and read neuro again." That is a common pitfall. When you do the second block of UWorld, you may still get a 40+%. Again, that you are getting 40+% does not mean you need to go back and reread neuro. Ideally, what I would expect is that if you score 40+%, given that you have actually studied, if you score 40+% the first time, that is completely fine. And you have to accept that that is completely fine. You are going to do a proper review. Emphasis on the word proper. Proper review. I've seen some of my students, they tell me, oh, I did a block of UWorld, I did a block on GI, and I reviewed it. And then I asked them, okay, let's look at some of those questions. And I pick up randomly one of the questions they missed, and I tell them, explain this question to me. So what was the thought process behind this question? Why was the answer this? Why not? Why did you miss it? Why was it not the answer you picked? And they can't do that. If after reviewing a block of UWorld, I take you to one of the questions that you missed, and you cannot explain to me why the correct answer was the correct answer and why your answer was wrong, you have not reviewed that block of UWorld. You have wasted the block, right? So a proper review is what you are looking for on any UWorld block. If you review this block properly, on the next block, you're going to score much better. Sometime very soon, maybe in the next 2 videos or so, I'm going to share with you a student performance. This is the most interesting student I've had in a long time. And I'm going to show you what her progress looks like from when I started with her until where she is at current. The next time I would expect you to maybe score a 50+%. And by the time you do 3 blocks on that subject, you should be in your upper 60s. You should be scoring above 65%. Anything above 65% is good, right? You'd find out that every time you score above 65%, you're actually going to be above the general average for everybody else using UWorld. So that's what you want. UWorld system by system review is the next thing you want to do. Of course, you're going to be using first aid at this point. First aid is an indispensable resource. And if you're in med school watching this video, you're in MD1, you want to start using first aid already. And you want to use it extensively. You want to use first aid through med school so that you understand what is going on with first aid. First aid is not a memorization tool. It's not it's not for students that don't know what they are doing. I always say first aid is the first treatment given to a medical student before you rush them into the USMLE. First aid is there for, okay, I understand this stuff. I have read this stuff. I just want to find a resource that gives me all this information quickly and at the go. That is what first aid does. And if you don't understand the material, you don't know the concept, you don't understand what's going on with this subject, and you read the first aid, it's going to be very strange for you. What you're going to find is, oh my God, I'm just memorizing these things. It's like fact after fact after fact after fact. And many times you don't even see how these facts tie into each other. And you end up saying the first aid is useless. It's one of the very best resources. It's probably one of the best resources out there for the USMLE. But at the same time, there is a requirement before you jump into the first aid. The answer to 96% of questions on your exam are expressly stated in the first aid. Sometimes my students say, but I didn't see that in the first aid. And I tell them, okay, what about this? Have you seen this in your first aid before? They say, oh, shoot. Oh, my God. Now, the problem is that when you read the first aid without context, you don't even notice what the first aid is trying to show you. Because it's like everything is just fact, fact, fact. There's no story, there's no narrative behind it. So it's easy to fall out of line when you're using the first aid, right? So use it properly. I would recommend that you use the first aid along with a video resource. You use the first aid. All these are in the study phase. You're using UWorld, the absolute Q bank I recommend. You're using first aid and a video resource. Now, the video resources out there are 1,000,001. And I am recording videos myself because I find out that at the end of the day, I still have to teach my students over. So I say, why not just make videos for them? A video resource. There is Kaplan. A lot of medical students tell me that Kaplan is too long. Well, more than likely, people that think Kaplan is too long are usually students that want to prepare for the exams very, very quickly. And many times they end up spending way longer than they planned in preparation. Kaplan is long, but Kaplan is detailed and goes into explanation a whole lot, right? So my best recommendation for a student that has 6 months, 7 months, that's a long way out from their exam, is probably going to be Kaplan. There's master reports, there's boards and beyond for step 1. There are a number of them, right? Boards and beyond. I don't know all the other videos you guys use. Patoma, Sketchy, all those video resources. You should have at least a video resource. To me, there is slight differences between them. It's not so much of a big deal. I allow all my students use whatever video resource they prefer, as long as it is one video resource. You're going to be using Kaplan and you're not doing so well, and your friend tells you, oh, you see your friend that is doing so well, and you go, oh, but she's using Bots and Beyond. Maybe that's why she's doing well. No, Bots and Beyond is not the reason she's doing well. Okay. So you don't need to change to start using Bots and Beyond, because when you start using Bots and Beyond, then someone else is going to tell you, oh, if you use the Goyan is great. And I think Goyan is great, by the way. Then you switch to Goyan. I've had a student that has used almost every single resource that there is for step one. And when you do that, you become a cocktail of confusion, because you don't have a voice that you hear. There are times when I can hear the voice of the Robins, for example. I know certain lines in the Robins, how this was phrased, how this was stated. I hear the voice of certain teachers that taught me something, because it is only that voice I have in my head. When 5 teachers have taught you gastrointestinal pathology, if you are not very good at what you're doing, you're going to be confused. There is no voice that registers in your brain, because you've heard the same thing in 5 different ways. Now, if you understand the material already and you just want to look at it from a different perspective, that's a whole different scenario, right? You're going to see things more clearly by listening to more people. But if you don't know already what is going on with this organ system, you've not understood it, then if multiple people teach you that information, the likelihood is that you're going to become even more confused. And students like that are usually more difficult to get prepared for the exam than others, from my finding. So, one video resource, the first aid and the UWorld during the study phase of your USMLE preparation. After the study phase of your preparation, you studied all these things. Now you're going into UWorld mixed blocks. Mixed. Somebody is going to ask, oh, but Kennedy, wouldn't I have finished all my UWorld questions at that time? The answer is no. UWorld has over 3,500 plus, or even 600 plus questions at the moment. You don't want to do every single block of GI pathology, for example. If you do 3 blocks here, or even 2 blocks here, generally 3 blocks, generally you should be comfortable and move on to something else, right? By the time you come here, you're going to be doing questions in the mixed fashion. You're going to be looking at questions from all the systems. Now, there's something that's going to happen. Remember, I told you initially that when you do your first block of UWorld, you may get a 40+%. When you do the second block, you may get a 50 or thereabout. You may get above a 60%. Some people would score much better than these scores I'm giving you. I'm just showing you what the average student may look like. When you start doing mixed blocks, your scores are going to drop. And when I do the video on my student's performance and her progress, you're going to see classic examples of all of these things. When you go to the mixed block of UWorld, you may find yourself scoring 40% once again. This is perfectly normal. You have studied all the organ systems, you were scoring 65%, 70%, 65, above 70, and then you try to do the mixed UWorld blocks and your score drops. That is perfectly normal. A lot of students will get to this point and become very frustrated and think that, oh my God, I thought I had gotten better. Why am I scoring so bad now again? And then you go back and start studying the materials over again. This is a very common mistake. I've had students do it, at least before I met them. If you do this, you're never going to be ready for the step 1. You're never going to be ready for the step 2 CK. You're going to keep falling into the same thing, because it's a cycle that's not going to end. The reason why your score is going to drop and expected to drop and supposed to drop is because if you studied for 3 to 4 months, system by system, I mean, the system you studied in the first month, you're already going to forget information from that system. The system you've studied in the second, third month, you're not going to remember everything. And it is perfectly normal to forget these information. So when you get 40%, you don't lose heart. What you want to do is, again, proper review. proper review of those questions on the UWord block. That is what you want to do. Just review the block and say, oh, yeah, I remember this. Oh, yeah, I remember this. Reference the first aid and see what they were talking about. Oh, my goodness, I forgot this simple detail. I forgot the role of metalloproteinase or type 5, type 4 collagenase or something like that. You review it and you remind yourself of the information. You may do the next block and still score a 40+%. That again is perfectly fine. What you're going to notice is by the time you do 2 blocks, 3 blocks of this mixed structure, your brain is now getting a hang of it. Your brain is learning to think of every organ system as a whole, not just GI, neuro, endocrine. Your brain is now going to begin to recall all this information, because the reason you're getting a low score is because you naturally forget, like everybody does forget. So once again, you're going to be going through this learning process, doing a review, and then someone is going to say, oh, does it not make sense then to do mixed? Just go ahead and do mixed from the beginning. No, the reason that is not proper is because you don't get to master anything. I really hope this makes sense. So you're going to go system by system UWorld. Your scores are going to improve. And then when you're done with that, you're going to go to do UWorld in the mixed fashion. When you start doing UWorld in the mixed fashion, your scores are going to drop again. And this is perfectly normal. You want to start building up from here, go to 50%, go to 60%, go to 70%, and so on. When you begin to score above the average, which is usually around, once you start getting greater than 65% in every block, you're pretty much getting ready for your exam. And if you're getting consistently above 65%, you're going to pass the USMLE. You're not just going to pass the USMLE, you're going to pass it above average, right? You're going to pass the USMLE above average. After this phase of study, or during this phase, if I was working with a student, we have NBME Reviews. For you out there, you may not have access to this, but basically what it is a compilation of NBME questions according to organ systems, and basically go through the NBMEs and see what we have there. You don't have to bother about this. This is just something I did personally and that I use for students. But it's not absolutely necessary before you to be able to pass your exam. But I just find it a very active way to actually help me review with students and help them get ready for the exam as well. For you, you can go straight to NBME assessments, self-assessments. NBME self-assessments. You want to pass a minimum of 3 self-assessments before you go take the exam. Step 1 is now pass or fail. NBME said they're going to be giving answers in percentages, right? They are no more going to be giving you a score, but of course you can always find out what the equivalent score is going to be. But you want to pass at least 3 self-assessments. And I would say you want to pass them as well as possible. You don't want to pass 3 self-assessments with 205, 210, 211, and then go write the exam. You want to pass them with 230s, 240s if possible. When you pass 3 NBME self-assessments, it doesn't matter if you have UWorld self-assessments. I prefer the NBME self-assessment, but you can take the UWorld self-assessments and count it as one of the ones you've passed. But certainly you want to pass at least 2 NBMEs. When you do this, you are officially ready for step 1. If you're writing step 2 CK, you want to pass at least 3 self-assessments on step 2 CK, preferably with a good score. Step 2 CK still has a score, so you want to pass it with a very good score. Best case scenario with a score greater than the score you are aiming for on the step 2 CK. If you're able to do that, you will inevitably pass your exam. You will find that the exam is doable, it's very easy to pass. If you have a problem navigating any of these processes, any of these stages, of course, there are minor adjustments here and there that we are going to do per student to help based on who the student is. But this simple structure that I've given you is going to help you prepare for the exam. Ultimately, you're going to be going to write your USMLE. And I hope you get the score you want. Step 1 is pass or fail, so I hope you pass. And if you're preparing for step 2 CK, I hope you get the score you need to match into the residency of your choice. Until next time, if you're new here, please subscribe down below, click the button down there and subscribe to this channel, and I would see you in the next video.